Truth is the... All right, first thing, bring your A game because I'll take nothing less. We're going to have an open and honest discussion, but the facts matter. Let's talk about the people. It's common sense. It's principles and policies that work for everybody. I just want to talk about how to fix this country. The David Webb Show. Let's dive into the economics of the dock workers' strike. Anthony Esposito, founder and CEO of Island Capital Investments and former director of U.S. equities at Scotia Bank. Anthony, thank you for joining me. You know, the numbers are fairly well known now, the ask by the dock workers, but the economic effects of this go far beyond our near shores or those ships that are beginning to line up.
Absolutely. David, thank you so much for having me on again. This is really a product, if you look back at it, it's a product of poor top-down policy and the resulting inflation that we're dealing with now. The last time we had a strike by the ILA, by the port workers, was back in 1977, and it was the same. It was a result of the same situation, the same scenario. This high inflation, people's wages can't keep up. The union members are struggling to, or feel like they're struggling to get their take-home pay to actually match the cost of living. And we're back in that situation again. So we have, as you said, everything's kind of well known at this point. The markets in general are not really reacting to it, which is shocking to me. But 36 ports being closed from the upper northeast all the way around to Houston. 50% of the goods entering the country are at risk or come through these ports, and five of the 10 busiest ports are being shut down. It's a tremendous amount of stress on an economy that's already weakened. Supply is going to be cut off. We're right back to where we were, the conversations that we would have or we had during COVID as far as supply chain and supply of goods. It's an inflationary event for us on top of, the Fed cutting rates when they shouldn't be and a continuous injection of liquidity into the system. It's just another cog in a wheel of an inflationary environment and a risk to the economy. There is absolutely no question. The estimate is that for every 1 day the ports are closed, it would take 5 days to recover, to actually unload and get those goods out and to consumers within the country. So this is not only a day-by-day issue, but understand this is a compounding, this is an exponential problem with supply and goods coming into the country at this point.
One of the biggest failures, as I see it, is that overall, as an approach on the economy, we don't address the fundamental issues. You brought up cost of goods, right? Dock workers are people like we all are. They have families, in whatever form. They have to buy groceries and gas and goods. So before we get to the debate, I'll leave it at that word, over the ask and the raise and what over the next few years, to bring it all to where they see it, and the other things like lowering automation or stopping automation. We're not tackling the fundamental issues in the economy, and that is a failure. If you want to call it top down, I think that's a good way to put it, whether it's from the political leaders, the Fed board, Fed chair, those who are, in a sense, in charge of not necessarily determining course, but making sure that the economy has a better environment in which to lower costs. The demand for more is to meet a higher cost factor.
Absolutely. And it is the responsibility of our elected officials to vote on policy, create policy and appropriately within the country to create a better environment and maintain the potential for each and every American to go to work, to make enough money to provide for their family and to get ahead. And that's not just rhetoric. as we hear from some of the candidates. That's the actual that's it. I mean, number one job of government is to protect its citizens, and then as we move through policy, it's hard to swim upstream, and that seems to be what we're all doing at this point. The massive deficit that this administration has indulged in is a big part of the problem. We are outspending what we need to in order to create GDP growth at this point. And this is all kind of wrapped up, David, into the conversation of inflation and policy. So we have a Fed that is trying to cut rates to reduce inflation and to increase economic activity, while we have a Treasury that is printing money and spending money at all-time highs, which is extremely inflationary. As an example, we spent around $690 billion in August as a government, $360 billion of which was new debt, to generate $300 billion in GDP activity, which in theory is creating growth and earnings and, supporting the workers in the country. So just think about it. If as a household you go to work every day to make $20, it's cost you $40 to get there. How long can you sustain that? How long is that really going to be able to support anything? It's a net negative game at this point, and the only ones that are suffering are the citizens. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. So we can go through what the union's demands are, and we can I can actually rationalize them. I'm not in the union, but I can rationalize the numbers based on the inflation rates that we've seen and the raises that they've been entitled to in their current contract. We have just created an environment in this country where the spending is out of control. The Fed thinks that they're going to manipulate and guide the market and the economy to the right spot, which is certainly not the case and has been proven not to be the case over history. And now we're paying the price of it. So, again, inflation really does lead to unrest because of the inability of the workers to pay for their standard of living, to provide for their families, and to move forward. And this is just one symptom of that. We see the union strike now as them stepping up and saying enough. We've had 9% inflation. The inflation rate is now down towards 2.7, but that doesn't mean that prices have come down. It means that the rate of increase has slowed. So that's one thing that I think is real important as well. If we are looking at inflation where we've been recently and what the rate of inflation is now, prices are not coming down. They're just going higher at a slower rate. It doesn't help. People need some support top down, and people need some support right now in their pocket, in their home, to cover the cost of living and provide for their families.
Well, let's go through the demands here, and let's call it, as you said, I think you put you can justify this, but I want to hear that from your perspective. When I look at the average blue collar wage in the United States, it sits right now, I believe this is BLS, at $25.69 an hour. Now that varies, right? It varies from a high of around $50 and down to about $9 to $11 an hour. So there's a vary. This is an average. And there is the breakouts of a 75th percentile in the higher category there, et cetera. They're talking about significantly more money, but yet these dock workers are going to the same grocery store that average $25 an hour worker is going to. So what gives them the justification for a higher ask? What is it?
Well, it's the same thing it would be in any other sector of the economy, right? It's the system of capitalism, and what do you bring to the table? If a $25 an hour at this point could be a barista at Starbucks or somebody stocking shelves at Walmart, I'm not knocking that position at all, but again, it's supply and demand, right? There are many more people that can go and learn how to make a grande espresso than there are that are going to be skilled enough to go and work on the docks and import all of the goods that we are importing on a daily basis into the country. So there's a value that you place on each seat in this country, in the world. And those values are not the same. And that drives innovation, and it drives, people educating themselves, learning new skills, and growing. That's what America's about. America's about, what can I do better and how can I do better for myself and my family and my country? Well, that's what it should be about. That's what historically I see America as. So, full circle back, you can't compare every blue collar job as though it's the same job. What is the value of that seat? And I think that I could make the argument that there is obviously a wage spiral question as we start to increase minimum wage and increase these blue collar wages across the board. Does that actually add to inflation too? It's a great argument, and it's a solid argument. But right here, right now, I think we're talking about the value of the seat and what actually is the effect on the country. So, said another way, if Starbucks employees were to go on strike and we can no longer get our iced mocha in the morning, well, that would kind of stink, but I think the economy would survive, right? Everyone would still get to work. Everyone would still be able to get what they wanted at the store. Everyone would still be able to feed their babies the baby formula they needed. Everyone would have toilet paper. Everyone would have water and food. But our economy wouldn't halt. It wouldn't come to a screeching halt. What we're seeing.
So is that an element of the ability to carry out the threat? Right now, dock workers are the top end of their salary is $39 an hour. They're asking for a 77% increase over the next 7 years. So is it really about the ability, the effect? I get your point, by the way. It's a very fair point about the value of the job, right? The effect of that position. But $39 an hour top out, 77% over the next 7 years. Is that a fair ask?
I don't know if it's fair, but I know I can make the argument for it. So if they're looking to go from $39 an hour and over the next 7 years go to $65 to $70 an hour, look at it. And the argument I would make is, or could try and make is, look at the rate of inflation and look at how we've been stuck in a situation where our wages are not growing to match inflation. Now, ideally, I would like to see inflation come down and not have wages chase, because as wages chase, we're actually adding fuel to the fire, right? As people make more money, there's more money to spend. Prices go higher, there's more demand, and the dollar becomes worth less, which is what we don't want. However, in the right here and right now, I could make the argument that as we've seen this massive spike in inflation, which we haven't seen since the 70s, and a spike in inflation like we're seeing now, to see on average, a 7% gain in wages over the next 6 years, 6 to 7 years, is probably more in line with inflation than the 2 to 3% normal, traditional inflationary wage that people typically get and that the union gets now. So they're essentially asking for double the increase to keep up with inflation. I don't know how far off that is based on where inflation is now and what it looks like is going to happen as the U.S. government continues to spend and continues to head back towards this trough of easy money.
Well, we also know the other side of that pendulum is if it were to come down and prices came down, there wouldn't be a reduction in salary. But it's not as if they're stuck at that 39 either. This is from the Waterfront Commission in New York Harbor. 1/3 of local longshoremen make more than $200,000 a year. That's according to their annual report. More typically, their salary can exceed $100,000 a year with overtime hours and shift pay and all of that. So they're not just stuck at 39, and some are doing significantly better. But if things were to reverse, and look, I would love it. I'm not going to, I don't believe it will happen, sadly, but inflation and costs, like you said, the rate of growth is slowed. I don't know if that ever comes down to a level that's reasonable or economically fair.
No, so the reversal, and let me be clear, I love this. This is a great conversation, and I love being on. I'm trying to make the case from the union side. I'm not saying that that's definitely my view, but I can make the case or try and make the argument. The reversal that you're speaking of is a reversal in inflation. It's not price reduction. So over time, we've never seen prices in this country, as we are an asset-based economy. We have never seen prices revert over any significant period of time and start to drop and come back in, right? In 1975, you were able to build a brand new house in Staten Island, which is where I'm from, so I know the number because my father built a house when I was born, for $32,000. That's not happening anytime soon, nor has it ever come back down. So on the reversal side, yes, the rate of inflation may reverse, may come down, and may compress. So prices will go up slower. You can make the case that prices are never going to come much below where they are today, which is pretty sad. But historically, that's been the trend in the country. As far as what they're making, if the base is 100,000 and then they have overtime, they have certain spots on the dock that are getting paid different prices, right? The guys that are pulling the trucks in and stopping them and guiding the unload are making less money than the guys that are inside watching the computer systems and making sure that everything's in line and nothing's broken and the workflow is as it should be. I know there are different wages and hourly wages and contracts, not contracts, but salaries paid for those individuals. If we're talking about $100,000 to $250,000, that's a significant number. But is it as significant as it was 20 years ago? No. The answer is simply no. I mean, we have people that are working, what we considered 20 years ago or 15 years ago a part-time job are now making $75,000 a year doing that. So the system is, for lack of a better word, broken. I mean, we are literally in a generational wage spiral where the cost of living continues to go up and the wages that are needed in order to support that cost of living continue to go up. So the numbers for you and I mean, I'm kind of an old dog. I remember when I was coming out of college, the big number everybody wanted to make was you needed to make $100,000. If you were able to come out of college, get onto Wall Street, make $100,000, you were starting to get over the hurdle. I would argue that number right now is $500,000, just because of the cost of living and just because of the way we've managed through this economy and our policies have led us to this point.
Yeah. No, look, we have I don't know, Anthony, is the right word inverted or perverted relationship in the economy? I'm going to go with perverted on this one.
I like perverted.
Inverted, truly upside down. But you're right. I mean, if you make six figures, like you said, we're about the same age. We've known each other some time. You hit that 100,000. You could live and exist in New York City, Staten Island for that matter, one of the boroughs. Today, you can't afford a closet at that rate. I mean, we really have a problem in this economy that requires a form of change in government, in management, in the Fed, in so many areas that need to work together. There's not one size fits all, one salary fixes all, one rate cut fixes all. We really need a true economic, not just analysis, but a plan, which includes government spending and all these other things that have taken us way to where we are today.
Absolutely. And I think just to touch on that point and go further, and I love the way you put it and kind of spun it into, we really are in an inverted, perverted state as far as our system. The proposals, what's going on under the Biden administration and the proposals by Kamala Harris heading in only make this worse. And just broad stroke, increased spending, increased taxes, we will be crushed. Her plan is to continue to print money, distribute money out to the population as a gimme, and then increase income taxes. So if you're working, your take-home pay is continuing to drop as it has under Biden-Harris. It'll continue to drop under Harris because you're paying higher taxes across the board, whether it's income tax, whether it's the corporate tax rate going up, whether it's capital gains tax on unrealized gains. You're going to take home less money, on top of which they're going to send more liquidity, print more money, and send more capital out into the system. It is a recipe for continued disaster versus your suggestion that we need to hit the brakes and go back to previous policy where people's take-home pay increases, but we're not flushing the system with liquidity. We need to reduce the amount of liquidity, the amount of debt in this country. We need to cut the deficit, and that is not going to be achieved by taxing and increasing revenues. There's no reason to send the government more money. There is a reason to let the people keep more of their money as far as take-home pay, and also reduce the liquidity in the system, which would strengthen the dollar and give us more purchasing power with the dollars that we've been allowed to keep because of lower tax rates.
Yeah, I mean, they can yell and scream all they want, but when you look at the revenue side, for example, of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which Biden and Harris would like to see expire, in 2 years, the revenue side paid with the government taken from economic activity. We need better plans. We need pro-growth plans in the economy, and we need to realize this is a long slog, not these immediate and reactionary issues by any of these, the Fed, the government, at any level, no matter what it is, or some of the more institutional players on the big level. Anthony Esposito, founder and CEO of Island Capital Investments. I'm guessing the island of Staten, former director of U.S. equities at Scotia Bank. Thanks, Anthony.
David, thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Enjoyed the conversation. And these are the conversations we need to have. And, the fact that Anthony can sit here and explain the pros and cons, it's one of the reasons I like having him here. 866-95-PATRIOT, 957-2874. You can weigh in at David Webb Show. You can weigh in at SiriusXM Patriot. And now if you're just planning a trip, well, you expect the trip is in part going to be way more fun than the planning part. And it can be a lot of work, right? So let Gate One Travel do it for you. And for over 40 years, Gate One's been planning amazing escorted tours, river cruises, and vacation packages that come with everything: airfare, hotels, meals, transportation, and transfers. And Gate One's local expert guides will take you on once-in-a-lifetime experiences across countries, over 7 continents, from Europe to Africa, Asia, even here in the Americas. You get the idea. They have hundreds of packages to choose from, so you can travel with comfort and ease. Quality, affordable travel is just one click away. So book that holiday, take that tour, sail that cruise, but save the work for Gate One. Right now, save 20% off escorted group tours and river cruises with code DISCOVER20 at GateOneTravel.com. That's DISCOVER20 at GateOneTravel.com for 20% off. The offer expires October 11th, 2024. Travel your way with Gate One Travel and see more of the world for less.